It is Wednesday, May 6th. Welcome to episode 5 of AVA Live. Before we jump into our star-studded guest list today on the call log, we have to cover a very, very, very important story. Something that happened a couple days ago. James, do you want to pull it up? I think we got to show this video real quick of something that went down yesterday.
I need you to go back.
This video has racked up nearly 10 million views on our Instagram of the now iconic Erin, assistant at the Met Gala, controlling stuff and being an absolute queen that she is in her red flats. And we wanted to bring on Brent, our Gen Z correspondent, to break down that video and talk about some of the reactions from our community. Brent, take it away.
I am so obsessed with her. She is so funny. I love the way she runs. I love the way she points like that. These shoes are the key to success in 2026. I might have to get myself a pair. I scoured through that video last night and I picked up some of my favorite comments and I just want to read them out. From State of Kate, she is 10 times more interesting than the actual Met Gala. From Elise 2 Fab, those were actually red heels when her shift started, and now they're flats from all the steps that she's taken. From Danny Cromero, I would guarantee she's been awake for 20 plus hours and has 50,000 plus steps. Girl, she got that Fitbit on for sure. All right, from JennaRose.co, crying every time she runs across the screen. This edit is Oscar worthy. From Akli, I don't know how to pronounce that. She's given more publicist energy than assistant energy. That she is. And my top 3, not the crowd going, ooh, like she's carrying the entire event on her back, because she is. The way the shoes are tippy-tapping is frying me. Look, turn that volume up if you have the chance. And last, and most importantly, not least, she makes it happen because she did. She is the icon. She is the moment. She is the MVP of the Met Gala 2026. I hope to see her running the show more soon.
It's the Erin Appreciation Show. Brent, you're the man.
I love her.
Brent, you're promoted, by the way.
Thank you.
Tori Birch also commented on that. She works at Tori. Big shout out to Erin. So this episode is dedicated to you. James, let's bring up the guest list, the call log today. We have a stacked episode brought to you by Central Talent Booking, fan favorites over here, who help facilitate the guests for this show and every AVA live show. First up, Clay Newbill. I was currently in the waiting room. We're going to bring him up in a sec, but executive producer of Shark Tank. He's one of the pioneers of reality TV. We have Michael Bosstick, who's the founder and CEO of Dear Media. You may know him from his podcast called The Bossticks. Reed Duchscher, who's the founder and CEO of Night Media, one of the biggest creator managers in the world. And Blair Kohan, who holds a special place in my heart. We'll get into that story. She's a partner and a board member at UTA. But first up, Clay Newbill, quick bio on him. He's the executive producer of ABC's Shark Tank. He's the showrunner who built the series from 2008 pre-production into a 5-time Emmy-winning 17-season global franchise that now airs in 50 countries. Before he ever met a shark, he produced and created iconic shows like The Real World, Road Rules. I grew up on those. Those are epic. Flashback, if you haven't seen them. Making the Band, and even The Bachelor and The Bachelorette. He is the architect of reality TV. So I think he's in the waiting room. We're going to bring up, we're going to bring him up in a sec before we hop in. And then also, Clay and I had chatted before. I think we're just waiting for him to hop in. But Clay and I had chatted before when we first met last week about his entry point to the industry. Okay, he is here, so we can pop him up. James, bring it on. Clay, how are you?
Good, Warner. Thank you. Sorry, I didn't click in earlier. Appreciate that introduction. I heard the end of it. Wow, the architect. That's a lot.
Hopefully I said it well, but no, appreciate you. I didn't know how much longer I could stall because we're live, but I appreciate you joining. We met, I think it was last week. Time flies, but really got to know each other for an hour and excited to share your story on the show.
Yeah. It was last week we spoke. As you said, I've been doing reality. I like to say I was doing reality TV before reality TV was cool, before it was really big. Right. I started early in the industry. A little bit how I ended up in this industry. My dad was a movie buff. Like a lot of people, it's like I decided I need to make the move to Los Angeles if I really wanted to try and start a career. So like a lot of people, I threw all my stuff into a car. I had a Prelude and drove across country and landed in LA for a role. My first job was I was going to be the second AD on a film called Cool as Ice.
And we actually have, just before, we actually have something here, a little prop to show you. I went out and ordered that as fast as I could to make sure we got it in time. Cool as ice, but keep going. I needed to pull this out.
Yeah, so it was the film with Vanilla Ice. I think it was in theaters for about 2 days. It didn't do very well, but it was a great job. Actually, I did a horrible job at it. I'm surprised they didn't fire me. But after that, the next opportunity I had was a show that was called, it was a pilot done for ABC called The Extreme Edge, which was a precursor to what would eventually become reality TV, which led to me getting other opportunities, and which eventually led to Real World Los Angeles. They did their first season in New York. Again, this was reality TV didn't exist as it does today. Back then, reality was the groundbreaking show that started it with their first season in New York. They moved to Los Angeles. I was hired to come in and help produce that season. I also did Real World San Francisco, which I selfishly say that that's the best season that was ever done, because it had Pedro Zamora and his amazing story of came into the show. He had AIDS, and his educational aspect of teaching people what that was at a time when there was a great stigma about it. And we had just an incredible cast with Rachel and Puck. Everybody remembers Puck. And then after that season, we were at the wrap party, and the owners, Buta Murray came up to me and said, we'd love for you to do our next pilot. It's a show called Road Rules. You'd be the showrunner. You can produce and direct it. And, this was like a dream, right? Just, I couldn't believe it fell into my lap like that. And I ended up doing that for 8 seasons before leaving to go produce Making the Band for Buta Murray, which was the first show that actually a first competition reality show that ended up, it even beat Survivor, but Survivor did a little bit better than Making the Band that first year in 2000. I'm joking, of course. They did very, 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 very much better. And that really launched what is currently today reality television.
Yeah, and so I want to go, before we go into Shark Tank, why has reality television been able to sustain such an amount of success and now continue to grow today?
I honestly believe that, people say truth is better than fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And I honestly believe that. I think there's something about watching someone when they're, in their daily lives or whether competition show, it's more relatable. It's real. It's not something that's written. Nothing against written thing. I love film. I love scripted television. I truly do. But I think, and in my opinion, there's 2 philosophies or approaches to producing reality television. There's shows like The Real Housewives and The Kardashians, which are docu-series, right? Where you're following, and in that you're bringing a family or whoever your cast is, and you talk about the show and you work together to craft the story. It's a little bit of acting. Then there's the Buta Murray school, as I call it, of reality television, which is Real World and Road Rules, and certainly Shark Tank, which is it's real, right? We're going to create a framework, and whatever happens inside that framework, whatever the story is, good or bad, whatever it is, that's the story. That's what I gravitate towards. And I think that viewers, they pick up on that. I think they actually like the real reality television better. But to answer your question, again, I think there's that real element that could be me. It's aspirational, it's inspirational, and you've got incredible storytelling.
Yeah. And so, with storytelling comes one of my, and we talked about this, my favorite show. I'm sorry to everyone else out there, Shark Tank. When we chatted last week, you talked about the process of trying to sell that show initially. And I think you had mentioned it took a couple years to actually get buy-in from the network. It's a lesson in betting on yourself. Can you tell that story and why you were so confident at the time and now that Shark Tank would be the success that it's been?
Yeah, absolutely. So yes, Sony Pictures Television owns the format worldwide. And I heard you say it's in 54 territories around the globe, or has been. It had been, I think it was about 3 years that they've been trying to sell it. And Mark Burnett got involved, who was my boss, or still is my boss at Amazon. And when he got involved, people, took notice, because Mark, obviously Survivor, and he's had so many incredible hits. And the thinking was the reason the hesitation to buy it, the thinking was that, and I understand this, was that, somebody goes to work during the day, they work their butts off, they're putting in all this time. Do they want to really come home and watch a show about work, right? I want to watch something that's going to make me forget about my troubles at work. But what they didn't factor in was the impact, the incredible stories that entrepreneurs have, the journey that they go through to get to that moment in front of the sharks, and having them share those stories, the ordeal that it's been to get to this moment. It's going to be, potentially a life-changing moment if they make that deal. When you layer that in, it's not really about work. It's really about the people and the journey that they've gone through, and the stories, that they share with us in each pitch, that make that show so incredible. But when Mark got involved, ABC decided they'd take a chance on it. The other reason was because it was doing well in the UK and in Canada, which are very close to our culture and to our taste from an audience perspective.
Yeah, and from audience perspective, we only see the 45 minutes or however long hour that goes in to whatever's on screen. If you're binging it, maybe multiple hours. Talk us through the behind the scenes of what actually goes down on the set of Shark Tank.
Yeah. So Warren, I think this surprises a lot of people. When you watch the show, each show has 4 pitches. The pitches are somewhere from 7 to 12 minutes. In reality, the average pitch is 40 to 45. These are real businesses, real people, and the sharks are real investors investing their own money. So they're going to be very thorough in their line of questioning, and it's real. Like I said earlier, that's the structure that we put in place. The only thing that we get involved with the entrepreneurs on is the actual pitch portion of it. When you watch that, there's a reason that it's theatrical and entertaining. It's because we've kind of helped them. First thing we tell them is like, listen, we may make suggestions, but this is your baby. You do what you want to do, but we're going to try to help you, because what we want to have happen is you get an offer, because from our perspective as producers, that's when the audience is going to sort of lean in, right? Like, I'm going to make you an offer. That's when people really like sit up in their seats. But the pitches have gone as long as an hour. We had one that went 2 hours where the guy actually looked off camera and said, "Can I get a chair?" And we didn't give him a chair, but to give you another time, we had a guy that was out there so long that he passed out. He passed out. He was leaning on a gurney, and you're supposed, and he'd been out there an hour, and his knees were straight. He did not bend his knees, and because of that, he lost blood flow and he passed out.
God. Was that aired on TV or no?
No. Understandably, they're like, hey, we're not sure we'd really like that to air.
Let's cut that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
But from passing out on pitches to massive success of not only the show, but of entrepreneurs that have come through the system of Shark Tank, can you talk to us about some of the biggest deals that have gone down in the tank, and also maybe walk us through a failure too that never ended, that the Sharks passed on, that ended up being a success?
Yeah, actually, we've had incredible, a lot of companies that have gone to have incredible success. There have been 8 actually that pitched on the show that now have over $1 billion in retail sales. Some of them 2 billion. And several dozen that actually have hundreds of millions. So a lot of great success stories. Like I said, it's we're really capturing lightning in a bottle when those deals happen, and it's real, and you can see the excitement of the people. But some of those companies, Bombas, a sock company, Scrub Daddy, that's a sponge company. Cousins Maine Lobster. It started out as one lobster truck. These guys came in and pitched. Now they've got over $1 billion. Everlywell, which is at-home test kits for like medical and stuff like that. And then talking about one that the Sharks actually passed on. So you and I talked about this last week, but as producers, when we're going through the casting process, we can't help but naturally think, oh, this is going to get a deal. The Sharks are definitely going to make an offer for this one, and not, right? So there was one particular company that came in that we were all thought, this is such a great idea. And this was early in our season, or early in, I think it was probably like about season 2 or 3. And it was a company called Doorbot. And the guy came in, and the idea was that when somebody rings your doorbell, it pops up on your phone and you can see who's there and you can talk to them. And we thought, wow, this is a really incredible idea. It was, tech, very forward thinking at the time. The Sharks actually all dropped out except for Kevin. And as Kevin does sometimes, he made a very sharky offer that couldn't be accepted. So Jamie, the founder, walked out, and he was like, I don't know what the hell I'm going to do, because I really need the investment, and I'm afraid my business is going to go under. The business aired, or the pitch aired a month or 2 later, And he got calls from other investors who saw it and said, you know what, I'll invest. By the way, if I had mentioned, we thought this would get a deal and we were surprised and shocked. That company, one of those people that called him was Richard Branson. Yeah. The company, they rebranded it, they changed the name, and is now known today as Ring, which sold to Amazon for over $1 billion. And Jamie is very, very happy and doing very, very well today.
Yeah, he is. And again, many more success than failures, but I love that story. We talked about it last week. To end this segment, it's always too short. I'm sad that we only have 15 minutes with you because we could talk forever, but you've seen a ton of entrepreneurs, Jamie included, come through the show. What's a through line or some attributes that you see with successful entrepreneurs that maybe young entrepreneurs out there could learn from?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think the most important thing is confidence. That's what I tell entrepreneurs all the time. I said, the most important thing that a shark is looking for is confidence. They want to know that, look, if you don't believe, if you're hesitant, why should I believe? Or more importantly, why should a customer or anybody else or someone who's going to be making that critical deal with you believe? So you have to be 100% committed. You've got to be relentless. You've got to have the drive, right? This has to be your everything. Yeah. You obviously have to have a good idea. It doesn't have to be something that's never been created. That's great if it's brand new and innovative, but it can be a better version of something that already exists. And that could be a food product or, just a better mousetrap. I think, so a good idea, confidence. And the thing that we look for is a great backstory, right? It's like, here's what I went through. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this is the ordeals that I've had and the struggle that I've gone through to get to this moment, because that tells the sharks what I just said. This person is committed. I know that this person is going to remain committed and will not stop until they succeed.
Yeah, amazing. A lot to learn from you, from the show. How many more seasons of Shark Tank we got?
This show can go forever, really, because as great as the sharks are, at the end of the day, the heart and soul of the show are the entrepreneurs who come in and pitch. And people are always going to have ideas.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Clay, thanks for joining us. Appreciate you. Hope to catch you soon, and congrats on all the success.
Thanks for having me on, Warner. Great seeing you again.
We'll see you next time.
Bye now.
Clay, a legend. That show's incredible. I hope it goes on forever. Next up on the call log, James, you're going to pull that up. We got Michael Bosstick. You may know him from the Bossticks. He's the founder and CEO of Dear Media, one of the biggest podcast ecosystems for millennial and Gen Z women, and the first for talent by talent network, home to 100 plus shows. He pioneered the 360 model in audio, from production to live events to brands. He also co-hosts, as I said, the Bossticks with his wife, Lauren, which crossed 750 million downloads, which was confirmed. I believe he's upcoming in the elevator. Super thrilled to have you on, Michael. How are you?
Hey guys, how are you? What's up, Warner? What's up,
Pleasure to see you. How's everything going?
It's been going. Wheels haven't fallen off yet.
That's good. You got a lot on your plate.
Give me some more time.
I know. I wish we had more than 15. I say that to every guest, but let's talk about Dear Media. I see the little mic stand there. I was reading an article last month where you said that Dear Media is not a podcast network. Can you talk about what you meant by that, and also lay out some of the business for people who may not be as familiar?
Yeah, I think a traditional podcast network is solely focused on selling primarily audio podcast inventory. When Lauren and I got in this business, we obviously have a show that was called a podcast. At this point, honestly, I just call them all shows. I don't even really reference on this podcast. I've been in it long enough to see the rise of video and social syndication and live events and streaming and all sorts of things in this space. So when we got in the space, what I tell people is, yes, one of the arms of the business is we produce quote unquote podcast shows, but we have our sights on commerce opportunities, on live events, on streaming opportunities, subscription revenue, you name it. We've co-published books. And so for me, I feel like a lot of these podcast companies have really limited their opportunities in media by being solely focused on the sole podcast inventory. And that was Lauren and I's experience, right? We joined a company called Podcast One in the early days, no shade, but they were really only focused on one small subset of our business, which happened to be the audio property. And at the time we had blogs and newsletters and social channels and an ambition to do more. And so for us, it always just felt limiting to build just a podcast network. And that's how we built the company from day one, to be able to capture more opportunity.
Yeah, I think, the term podcast has become, everyone has a podcast. Everyone and their mother has one out there. Lauren had a great quote that said, saturation signals demand on some level, I think in that same article. Where are you focused on as a company right now and scaling, again, beyond podcasts? And if you were a young creator right now trying to launch one, do you think it's still a viable option to go and launch a show that's coined as maybe a podcast?
Yeah, I think it's funny whenever I hear saturation. Of course, there's a lot more podcasts or shows these days than there were when we first started, but that's like saying Instagram or TikTok or the internet is saturated. I personally believe if you have a unique perspective and you have an authentic personality that only you can speak to, that there's plenty of room online for you to build any kind of business and stand out online. I think where people run into trouble is they start to look at what somebody else is doing, another celebrity or another creator, another host, and they say, oh, I'm going to do a version of that and kind of like copy in a way what that person's doing. And what I always tell those people that come through the Dear Media doors is like, that already exists and it's already being done very well by somebody who is in their authentic space speaking as only they can. But if you can come to the table with an idea and a perspective that only you have and kind of put your own spin, I mean, look what you've done, like you're a perfect example. Then I think there's plenty of opportunity to grow and to create really substantial businesses, but you have to have that unique spin and it has to be differentiated.
Yeah, so unique spin, differentiated. Can you talk about some projects you're working on now that may highlight some of those ideas?
For Lauren and I personally, or with Dear Media?
Dear Media, you personally. I mean, we'll talk about your pod and your brand building as well, but just some of that are really interesting to you.
Well, what we look at this point is like you don't have to be a quote unquote influencer or celebrity to come through the doors of Dear Media. We've done plenty of projects where somebody has no social footprint or digital footprint, but they have a very unique perspective, and maybe that's a doctor or that's an authority or an author or somebody who speaks to a certain niche or category in a very unique way, and we'll build properties and shows around them. There's a woman that was primarily in the child psychologist space that had no digital footprint whatsoever. We created a show around her. We co-published a book with her with Simon & Schuster. We got into some subscription content with her, and we really built like a media property around her. And that was with someone who had no digital background, was not a quote unquote influencer. So I think like at this point, we're really looking to the audience to dictate where the company goes, and we're trying to fill gaps that we're not already filling. So, if that's financial literacy, if that's, something in the niche of parenting, if it's something with women's health, if it's a topic or a hobby that is, taking off that we find interesting. If, there's a lot of new formats that we're also looking at, similar to what you're doing in the live space, daily prediction marketing, or, similar to what you see, I guess shows of the past doing in the live space. We're looking at that as well. And really what it is just tapping into what the audience is asking more of us for, and then servicing things that we haven't already served them.
Yeah, and there's a lot of pressure. You mentioned multifaceted creators to be multifaceted, not just focus on maybe one area. How much pressure do you see around the industry on the creators you work with, yourself even? You guys have expanded. How much pressure do you feel to become media companies and not just creators?
Well, I think for Lauren and I personally, and for Dear Media, and I'll do a little bit of like just talking about the industry in particular. Many of us could name successful celebrities or actors or creators that have kind of broken through, but for every one of those people over time, there's thousands of them that kind of haven't made it or have been lost by the wayside that we forget. And so for Lauren and I, we think about this all the time. What creates real longevity? As much as I'd love to talk on a mic for the rest of my life, and maybe I will, we're also diversifying all the time. We're making investments into other people, into other companies. We are, creating our own platforms. We are getting involved in things that can extend well beyond us as quote unquote celebrity creators or whatever you want to call it. And I think a mistake that a lot of creators or celebrities in general make is they think that it's going to last forever. And for some, a very small select few, it maybe will. But for those that kind of lose steam over time, if you don't diversify, if you don't start thinking about building your own businesses or your own platforms or investing in other things that can extend beyond maybe your personal shelf life, I think it's a real vulnerability. And everyone knows how those stories end. And again, like they're the stories that people don't really talk about as much. Of course, it's easy to point to someone who's had a lot of success for long periods of time, but those are very rare birds in the world of media.
Yeah, and for us, it's been 8 years, and I have a question now regarding exactly kind of what you just said about building a brand. The typical path that we normally see, and you certainly have seen, is that someone builds a personal brand first, whether it be on social media, Instagram, TikTok, or otherwise, now in the newsletter space, and then launching businesses around it. You actually did the opposite. So I'm currently doing the opposite as well. Give me some advice, and for others out there who may be in the same situation.
Well, here's the problem with like, listen, building a personal brand can have a lot of pros and it can have a lot of cons, right? If everything is weighing solely on you as the personality and the creator, there's limitations over time. You're seeing some, I won't throw shade, but you're seeing some of that play out with some of the biggest creators in the space now. If you build a business and a brand first, you then have the ability to welcome all sorts of other opportunities because it's not tied to one individual. And Lauren and I, from the beginning, like her with the Skinny Confidential, the reason it wasn't called the Lauren Bosstick blog and the reason Dear Media wasn't called the Skinny Confidential network is because we, in the beginning, knew that in order to work with other creators, other brands, invest in other companies, everything could not be housed under Lauren and I personally. From a business perspective, as you start to, work with other people or investors, there's a real key man issue if you don't navigate that, and it becomes a really difficult business to underwrite. Unfortunately for me, I was an operator first and kind of learned how to be creator second. So I was aware of all of these limitations going into it. And I said, okay, it's going to be much harder to build the business platform, but in the long run, it's going to create a lot of opportunity because we will not be limited to Lauren and I as personalities. And again, like, who knows, maybe we talk on a mic for forever, but at some point, if we decide not to, the business can live well beyond her and I as individuals, where in some cases, if a creator has tied everything to themselves personally, it's really hard to continue it on and it's really hard to step away.
Yeah, and a lot of that involves some element of risk, throughout. And your career, I want to pull out a quote from 2016. So I went back in the archives. I stalked you a little bit. You said your 20s are for making mistakes. It's a bit of a quote here, but I love it. The bottom line is don't be scared to fail. Be scared that you will never take the chance to fail. Failure will make you better. It'll teach you. It'll humble you. I refuse to go through my life on an easy road. I don't want that life. I want to take chances. I've accepted that most of them won't pan out. I also know that when it does, it'll be amazing. So 10 years later, that was an amazing quote. I pulled it from one of the original blogs. But 10 years later, looking back, what is a mistake that you've made in the past decade that ended up being incredibly valuable as a learning lesson?
Oh, I mean, like, here's the thing. Like, I have a real difficult time saying I've ever failed, and it's not from an ego perspective or from an arrogant perspective. It's because, like, I believe the way you speak to yourself it informs later how, what happens in your life. So I make plenty of mistakes. I make hiring mistakes all the time. I've made mistakes in structuring companies. I've made mistakes in saying things. I've made mistakes in responding to people that speak negatively online and getting in the weeds with them. But I believe, like, each of these opportunities, these little micro mistakes are indicators of where you need to pivot, where you need to improve, and where you need to keep growing. Where I think people in general get in trouble, from content creators to business owners to CEOs on down, is that they're so nervous about making that mistake publicly and having it be seen that they never actually do the thing to take the chance to even get in the position to make the mistake in the first place. And so I guess what I was saying, and probably actually even encouraging myself a little bit, sometimes I say things and then I'm like, okay, if I said it publicly, I have to act on it, is basically just reminding myself that if you don't take a chance and you don't do things that stretch you and make you uncomfortable, and you're not willing to put yourself in a position where there could be a mistake, you will never have the opportunity to grow or see if something works. And like, really, if you look at my personal career, there is no reason from a linear perspective or an educational perspective or a background that I should be running one of the largest media companies out there right now. Like, I wasn't trained in it. I didn't go to school for it. I didn't work in an agency or in Hollywood or management. As a matter of fact, like, I had no background whatsoever in media, but I came at it with a fresh perspective and with the ability to be humble, knowing I was going to make a lot of missteps along the way and then adjust along the way. One of my favorite things I've said for years is launch fast and adjust. You got to get it out there. You got to get the feedback, good or bad actually being more important sometimes. And then you got to take that humbly and say, okay, like, learn from it and adjust. I've seen so many people that I've met over the years that are still telling me that they're going to do this idea they told me about 10 years ago that they haven't done. And to me, that's always it's a huge tragedy in life.
You mentioned something that I do as well. It's where I'll put it out into the world and make it happen. This show, I said, we're launching a show, a live show. I don't know how we're going to do it pretty much, but we ended up doing it because it was out there in the world. And I think so much of what I admire about your career is the risk taking, the way that you've carved your own path, and also working, with your wife as well on a podcast, and carving the way for a lot of young creators coming up behind us that are going to have opportunities because of what you've built. So kudos to everything on the Dear Media side. And what I also admire is the way that you're looking at building that 360 model with, cross, whether it be live events, as you mentioned, or products. Can you walk us through how a deal, you don't have to talk about the creator necessarily, but the intricacies of what a modern day mega deal really looks like for one of these bigger creators you work with?
Well, the benefit I have, again, of having no background or education in how these things work in the past is I was able to basically throw the entire playbook away because nobody ever showed it to me to begin with. And so when Lauren and I started doing this kind of thing, we basically realized that whether it was an agency or a management company or a production company, many of them were not servicing our business the way that we wanted to be serviced. I think a lot of them were playing catch up. A lot of them were kind of like waiting for something to happen. I mean, we used to have to beg, borrow, steal for people to pay attention to the podcast. I can't tell you how many times I've been in a room where people said, "What's a podcast? Why would you invest in a podcast? Why would you do that?" And now like those conversations kind of look dumb. But we essentially had the benefit when we created Dear Media of just saying, hey, we're going to build this company and create an infrastructure that exists to service our business the exact way we want it to be serviced as people that are speaking on a mic and creating digital content. And so because of that, we were able to say, okay, like we're not getting this from other companies. We wish the company would invest in our CPG brand. We really like to do stuff in live. Oh, we have ambition to go do speaking deals. We'd like the ability to invest in other companies and other creators. And so we also want the ability to have long-term partnerships that don't just touch the show, but maybe touch our social channels and our newsletter. So we basically created that infrastructure. And as you can imagine, in the early days, a lot of the agencies, and when I mean like the buying agencies, the brands, they had problem with that. They said, hey, this is how podcasts are sold and how it's done. We said we didn't care. We're doing it this way. A lot of the agencies from the talent side were saying, hey, we're carving this, we're carving that. And I said, well, then you can't work with us. We're not doing that way. A lot of the management companies had issue. And again, like I have tremendous respect for a lot of these companies and some of them have become my partners. But I also at the same time am completely willing to tell them that their model is outdated and doesn't work and just keep doing it our way, the way that we want it to be done, regardless of who gets upset or turned off by that, because I believe in the conviction of where we're going and where the space is going. And I think what creators and celebrities are going to want in the future is not just representation. Again, I know a lot of agents listen to this, but they want people who are going to step in and actually service their business and help them grow, invest alongside them, put them in deals where they can extend their businesses beyond them as media personalities. And so for us, I'll give you from a Dear Media perspective, we've done deals with big creators where we're signing them. We're obviously putting them in great show deals. We're doing, all of the structure that exists around that. We're bringing them opportunities that extend beyond their show. We're investing in their CPG businesses and helping put those in place. For Lauren and I's business in particular, Dear Media was the first lead check into her commerce business. And that was part of the deal structure that I set up where she obviously gets her show serviced her with me, but also then got a check into her business to help her stand up her own product line. And we help put logistics in place for her to have a team that she could work with to help build that opportunity. And again, I think like that's what we wanted as creators and what more celebrities and creators are going to look for in the future. Anyone, can get into business where you're selling a piece of someone's business or putting them in a deal, which is great. But people really want help now building a real infrastructure and a long-term asset.
Yeah, and we have Reed from Night Media hopping on in about 2 minutes over here after we ask you the last question. So interested to hear his take on it because you both, I see, as very much forward-thinking, leading the charge on how this new entertainment industry operates. But we do have a little thing we do on the show where we have a mail cart with some manila envelopes. We actually have a question from the crowd for you.
Okay.
And I want to ask you, we'll pull it out here. So this is from Alexis. Alexis this is her question. I currently work in another industry and want to pivot into entertainment. How have you thought about pivoting throughout your own career?
I mean, my whole career is a pivot. I started in real estate. I was in aviation. I had an agency. Now I'm running a media company and talking on a mic. I think listen, if you have the conviction and you really want to do it, then do it. I think people overthink these things, right? A lot of people are waiting for permission or they're waiting for the credentials or they're waiting for the experience. Like, again, my thing is just go and do it. You're going to know rather quickly if you have the chops to get it done or not. People are going to let you know, I promise, especially if you put stuff out there publicly. but you'll never know unless you actually go and take that step. And I think, again, so many people are waiting for the credentials or the position. I can't tell you how many times in my career I've had people tell me, oh, you don't know, you don't have the, even we do our podcast, you know, we're talking to experts in different fields and they say, oh, you're not this and you're not that. How can you speak? And it's like, we can and we do. And so, again, I think be bold and stand in your convictions and make the move. And the worst case scenario is that you end up back where you are right now. I always tell people that, like, you can always go back and get that job again or an adjacent job. You can always go back to that industry, but you'll never know unless you take the step forward if you can actually, you know, make that pivot or take that step. And so I'm a firm believer in just doing the thing. Obviously, you have to work hard and do all the things that are required. You have to, you know, be a self-learner and be knowledgeable and do all the things to set yourself up for success. But you can't just hesitate and wait, because nobody's ever going to give you that permission, and it's never going to be the right time. The right time is when you decide to make the move. And so I firmly believe that, and that's been the entire history of my career. Is I've never waited permission. I've just gone and done the thing and waited for the feedback and adjusted along the way. And it hasn't been perfect. It's been very messy. It's been choppy at different times. But again, it's a constant improvement and working to be better each day. And I think that's what makes it fun.
Amazing. Michael, you continue to inspire me, and hopefully Alexis, who asked that question, takes that very personally, and hopefully many hear that out there. But I always say the biggest risk in life is taking no risk at all. You've taken many throughout your career and seen a lot of success. Excited to continue to track all the success into your future.
Thank you for having me, and congratulations on all of your success. I know the audience that you have, it is very engaged, and you've built something really incredible here. People were very excited. The team, when I got this opportunity, were like, oh my God, like they were so excited. So again, congratulations. It speaks to what you've built, and I'm sure you're going to continue to have tremendous success.
Means a lot. I appreciate you, and hopefully we see you in person soon.
Love that. Thank you, man.
We'll see you. Love him. Love what he's done. Dear Media, go check him out. Ton of great shows on that platform. Second to last year, Reed from Knight Media. We also got a chance to meet, I think, two weeks ago. Knight is a talent and venture company behind some of the internet's biggest creators like Kai Cenat. He managed MrBeast for 6 years and is a board member of Feastables. He built Knight from his bedroom in 2015 into a multi-vertical empire spanning management, podcasting, and venture, just raising $70 million to keep buying up businesses at the center of internet culture. I think we do have Reed coming up in the elevator. Let's bring him on. Reed, how are you?
Good. How are you guys doing?
Great to see you. How have you been?
I'm good. Just got back from Miami. I was at F1 and trying to get back to my sleep schedule. So how's everyone over here?
It's great. What a race. Who's your team? Who's your driver? Or are you just there for the sport?
I don't really have a driver or a team. I grew up a NASCAR guy, being from North Dakota. And so I'm really just a fan of the sport. I just kind of hang out. I get to meet a lot of great people. I think if anything, I probably lean more Mercedes, but that's just because I've watched Drive to Survive and I just like Toto Wolff.
Yep. So James, you want to pull up? There's a picture that we did want to pull up. You mentioned North Dakota. We got a picture that I don't know if you're not going to see, but we have a picture of you holding a football right now in North Dakota, the Bison jersey on. So you were an athlete, obviously. Talk to us about transitioning from your days as a football player into on the agency side of the sport.
Well, I started off as an NFL agent. Like, I think that felt like the easiest path for me to get into was representing my friends. And so I got certified in the CFL as a contract advisor, took the bar exam, started negotiating with GMs for some of my friends that played in the Canadian Football League. And so the transition from then being a sports agent, being on the brand side to meeting Dude Perfect actually was pretty smooth, because a lot of the brands that I was working with while I was at that sports agency wanted to work with Dude Perfect. And so I kind of parlayed that, like meeting all these brands while I was at that sports agency, into trying to convince them to spend money on YouTube. And one of those early ones was Topps Trading Cards. And they jumped in, did a Dude Perfect video. The rest is kind of history. But yeah, I don't know. It didn't feel like I was like swimming up current. It kind of felt like my role as a sports agent actually helped a lot. And obviously me as an athlete, you know, I think it's like you're learned how to be a teammate. You have to be on time. You have to be very diligent. You have to learn a playbook. Like all these things, you know, that I learned as a college athlete definitely helped me today. And I had one of the best strength and conditioning coaches in the world, and Jim Kramer. And so it's like having that individual like help me I think, evolved from an 18-year-old kid out of high school who didn't know anything, didn't really know anything about sports and business and being responsible and on time. And so him, not having him in my life, I think I may have ended up in a much different path.
Yeah, and in the sport agent world, I was reading an interview with you where you said you watched Jerry Maguire 15 times. We actually have on, I don't know if I'm supposed to say this, but Lee Steinberg, who's the inspiration behind that that character, next week. So you're an agent.
Actually, funny story. So when I was trying to get a job as a sports agent, I would drive to all these offices, like it was like Rep One Sports with the Tollner brothers. And then I remember going to Lee Steinberg's office in Newport Beach, and I had my resume. I wanted to get a job, or I wanted to get an internship. And I sat in his lobby, and I was going to wait for him to come out, and some like random kid intern was like, "You have to get out of here, or we're going to call the police." And so I actually got escorted out of Lee Steinberg's office trying to get a job from him when I was 23 years old. So I've still never met him, but I do remember getting kicked out of that Newport office.
Maybe we'll bring it up next week. Probably not, but that's an amazing story. Again, there was also a story about you bringing laminated resumes, which I'm assuming was around this time. But I want to talk about your bet on Dude Perfect. And it was an early bet. Now that seems obvious. Everyone's, following the path now. But what really made you believe in what they were doing? And what did that process look like when you were reaching out to them?
I think the first thing that I had noticed was once you watch one Dude Perfect video back then, you end up watching 10. And as everyone that I had met kind of had that same instance happen, where their early videos were essentially music videos. They were 4 minutes long. They had music playing, and it was just like constant trick shots, and it felt so fun, but the videos felt so quick. And so you'd end up like watching the entire catalog. And so I think that was the first thing that I had noticed. The second thing I had noticed was a lot of the athletes that we were working with, when I would send them Dude Perfect's channel, they would all want to do a video with them. And so as those like instances when, Odell Beckham ended up doing one of those videos with them around the NFL. And so the pieces started to fall in place. But those are the two things that I noticed first that made me kind of realize like, oh, they actually have motion. This is going to be a thing. There's probably going to be more people in the wake of Dude Perfect that see them have success, and they're going to start their own channels. But this was 2014. Yeah. It's a very early time of YouTube. The MCNs obviously had already been around, but in terms of talent management companies, there really wasn't any.
Yeah. And so management companies, 2015, a quote here, starting a management company was a wedge into everything else. Seems that you were taking on some traditional Hollywood systems. We just had on Michael Bosstick from Dear Media, who offered kind of the same point of view. What was your mentality going into that era and starting a management company?
The mentality was just to survive early on. I mean, for the first 3 years, I was working just myself from my desk in my bedroom in Dallas, Texas. And so I was so obsessed with what I was doing that it didn't really matter if I was making $10,000 or $30,000 a year. I was just going to continue doing what I was doing. And so, I think having a mentality back then, it was just like super internet obsessed kid who was going to figure out how to make this a business, like hell or high water. Like I was going to do this for decades, and eventually it was just going to work. Like there was no second option. There wasn't anything else that I wanted to do. Even if you had talked to me back then, 2015, 16, 17, that was all I talked about. That's all I wanted to think about. And so it eventually, obviously, the wheels started to turn, and I started to sign more clients, and it started to become a thing. And then once I started to put a business plan together in 2017, I started to realize that like the manager is usually the closest business ally to the talent, and the manager is in the best position to start businesses with the talent, which then led into my conversation with MrBeast, which then led into MrBeast Burger and Feastables and some of the stuff we had done. So the venture studio is really like our packaging business that the agencies have. Our packaging business is more around owning equity and building things and being entrepreneurial, not packing up films and taking them to studios. And so that was the kind of the concept around it. Represent the biggest internet stars, and then be able to be business partners with them and whatever they want to build.
And you quickly glossed over, and I actually heard you on My First Million. I love what they said is like not mentioning the term MrBeast when they were bleeping it out, but you glossed over that quickly in I think the year was 2018. You worked with, one of the biggest creator at the time. Can you talk about that relationship in the early years of what you saw how the industry was really changing then and the effect that it's had on now?
Yeah, I met Jimmy in February of 2017. It's like when we had started working together through a Twitter DM. I think everyone kind of knows the story by now, but YouTube still was very much in the vein of Jake Paul, Logan Paul, David Dobrik daily vlogs. That's what YouTube kind of was in 2017. And we had seen this daily vlogging, like, get algorithmic momentum going on YouTube. And if you posted every single day, you know, the YouTube really favored the just like constant activity and posting of videos. But there became this like algorithmic change that happened in 2018, maybe late 2017, where videos started to get judged based on their individual stats. So it would get judged on its click-through rate, which is like the amount of people that get served the video, that click on the video, and then its average view duration, which is like the amount of time that an individual that clicks on the video watches the video. Jimmy had already figured out that that's kind of where the algorithm was headed. And so, you know, people see like the beastification of YouTube and all these different things. I mean, that was real. Like, I think from 2018 to 2022, late 2022, everyone was just trying to like growth hack the algorithm through like colorful thumbnails. How do you grab someone's attention? How do you hold their retention through the intro up to the middle of the video? And so everything really became this, like, how do you hack the algorithm? And obviously, like, Jimmy was at the forefront of that. He already knew how to do that. And he knew that if you would get a certain click-through rate and a certain average view duration, that it would equal millions of views. And, you know, he had all this like on an XY axis thing to look at. And then other creators obviously figured it out. So, but when I first met him, that was not what YouTube was. YouTube was very different. And it obviously was a lot of people just like daily vlogging or talking direct to a camera, editing their own videos. It's become more of a business now. There's a lot of creators that have 60, 70, 80 full-time employees. They have massive production companies. I think we're continuing to head in that direction. But I do think that the like over optimization of editing and thumbnails, that era isn't coming to an end. I just think that the era of YouTube that I've seen over the last 18 months has kind of favored longer drawn out videos, not super over edited. Like it does feel like what Sam Sulek and Outdoor Boys and some of these people have done is where we're kind of now headed in terms of like YouTube for the next couple of years.
Yeah, and YouTube too. And I think I agree with you completely on where we're headed. These mega stars will continue being mega stars. I also think there is a frustration from a consumer lens, and we talk about this a lot on the show, where when you go on social media, you're pulling a roulette wheel to see what you get next. For us, I only care about reaching our direct audience, the people within our niche. You know, there's clipping companies that are hitting us up saying, why don't you go clip this 200 different ways and reach a mass audience? I only care about the people, again, that we're trying to reach in an authentic way and bring some benefit to their day. I think there's a lot of the flip side of that now with these clipping companies and AI, being able to export as much as you possibly can to get as many clicks and really raise these vanity metrics. How much pressure are you seeing from the industry and the creators within it to follow that path, just continue to chase these vanity metrics and not really focus on necessarily the effect or content or engagement they're having with the content they're putting out?
It depends on your goal. I think if your goal is to be the biggest, most influential creator in your category or on the platform, then yes, they're all chasing that. They're like, how do I hire clippers? How do I clip my content? Like, how do I optimize? But I do think a lot of creators where that's not the goal, they just want to build a sustainable business. They understand that having loyal followers is actually the game. Like we're seeing that a lot more. And I do think that, YouTube has kind of pushed down on the what is a macro creator. I think it's way harder to break out it like more broadly than it was 5-6 years ago. I think that like the algorithms have just gotten so good at feeding people exactly what they want, which is like why your show becomes really interesting, because YouTube and TikTok will figure out where the audience is that will click on these videos. And so then you're able to just like build real depth of following instead of like you having to like go hire a clip farm or hire a clipping Discord and go really wide. And I think that's interesting. I just think that you end up having a lot of casual viewers, not a lot of viewers that like truly care, that like tune in, whatever it is every Wednesday. But it's a mix. Like, I don't think that there's a large majority of creators that are chasing clipping and everything else that's kind of the new meta right now.
Yeah, and you said before we do have a question from the crowd, but real quick, you said the platforms don't want people to break through. What do you think is broken about the creator economy, and how do you think that this next crop of young talent are trying to fix it?
I don't think there's anything broken. When I say that, I mean that the platforms would rather have a lot of creators widen out the platform in different content verticals, each pulling 500,000 views per video, instead of one person that dominates the entire mind share of YouTube pulling 100 million views per video. Like, I do think the nicheifying and the pushing and widening down is something that every platform is kind of thinking about right now. I think YouTube was just to it first, which they are usually to things first in most cases. I think they had been thinking about this for a long time. I actually don't think it's broken. I think that discoverability through TikTok and YouTube Shorts is better than it's ever been. I think starting a creator career now is better than it's ever been because of the discoverability on all the platforms. And so like I'm actually very opportunistically thinking that creators that want to come into the fold, that have a unique POV like yourself or have a unique show, through short form actually can break out and get distributed and get discovered. Before short form content and before TikTok really broke out, you needed to make a really good crafted, edited video that had high retention that would show up on the For You page. Like, the subscriber page on YouTube is completely irrelevant now. No one cares. And there's not even a trending page anymore. No one goes to trending page. So like, the only way to really break out was to have great stats on your video to get it on homepage so more people would click on it. Now, because of short content, discoverability is so much easier. And I get this question every time I do an interview or every time I do a panel, and they're like, what's your advice for someone who's starting a career today? Or do you think it's impossible for someone to break out on the internet? Is it too oversaturated? And I think it's completely the opposite. I do think that it's very saturated, but I think that short form allows you to break out. You can have 0 followers on TikTok and still get a 1 million view video if that video is good.
Yeah, and it makes me optimistic too about the future of this industry. We hear it, from a lot of young creators too, but there's more opportunity than ever because it's, as you said, saturated. We just had on Michael Bosstick, who talked about saturation presents opportunity because there's clearly interest involved in a certain area of the business. And last question here, you've your hands in many areas of the business. I followed your career for years, someone I've always kind of looked up to in creating, building businesses. You just raised a bunch of money. What is one goal you have for yourself? Call it the next 12 months and the next 24 months.
I think find more balance. I think for the last 10 years, I've run 1,000 miles an hour, worked 7 days a week, worked 16 hours a day. I think at some point, if you want real longevity in your career, like, you have to find a little bit of balance. Like, I do plan to do this for a long time. And so I have thought a lot about, like, how do I not get burnt out? Like, how do I get resetting myself back to base? Like, how do I continually stay obsessed with what I'm doing? And so I think, like, sometimes getting away from it for a few days and then coming back to it has been helpful for me. I did not have that balance early in my career at all. And so I think, like, if I'm thinking on a long-term outlook of, like, if I want to do this for the next 10 to 20 years, like, I have to be able to have some sustainability with it. I just burn the candle at both ends. So I think that's one. I think the next thing is we're going to continuously just be ruthless about internet. Like, I think everyone expects us to buy a traditional talent management company, and who knows, we may make a move in the future. But I've always just been of the mind frame that, like, we just need to stand still as a company, like, just be ruthlessly obsessed with the internet and everything happening. And eventually it just all kind of comes to us. And now we're seeing that with traditional Hollywood. And Netflix is doing a lot of deals with YouTubers. Fox is doing a lot of deals with YouTubers. Traditional management companies are trying to sign YouTubers and TikTokers. Like, it feels like everything is just moving closer to where we've been. And so I'm not necessarily trying to, like, move in a bunch of directions. I think we're just, like, personally as a company, just, like, staying where we're at.
Yeah. There is no longer, I think, a real fine line between that creator economy and traditional Hollywood. And you were one of the early betters on that. And taking a real bet on where the creator economy was and helping shape where it currently is. It's been awesome talking to you, and hopefully we'll be in touch soon. Hopefully I see you in person, but congrats on everything you've done. You're inspiring. I think everyone out there should go and dig a little deeper on your career, and think a lot about how they can bet on themselves in their own lives to follow path on what you've done.
Of course. Thanks for having me. Excited to come back in the future.
100%. We'll have you on.
Later.
Sounds good. We'll see you. Last but not least, Blair Kohan. She's one of my favorite people in the entire world. She's a partner. If you don't know her, she's a partner and board member at UTA, one of Hollywood's most powerful agents, and the longtime rep behind Seth Rogen, Evan Goldberg, Nick Kroll, Giselle, Adam Scott, Rosalia, Ike Barinholtz, Paul Rudd. I could go on and on. We're going to hear her story. I think we have her in the waiting room. Let's bring Blair up. Blair, how are you?
I'm good, Warner. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Thank you for joining. As always, looking very stylish. I do want to bring up a picture, James, before we jump in.
Oh, no.
Yes, it is. We first got connected. Yeah, we have it on screen now. 2024, the agent with the best style, Blair Kohan. I know that was probably one of the biggest achievements in your career, but that's when we first connected back in 2024.
I didn't know you, and I just blindly reached out to you to say, wow, I don't know how this happened, but it's very exciting, and I'm most honored and flattered to receive this award. The other awards were not nearly as flattering or I would say elegant. So I was happy to get that one.
No, they were all flattering. I was actually scared shitless when I posted that because I was like, I've never met this person. I've heard her name all the time. She reps the biggest talent. What is she going to think of me? But we've gotten close in the past 2 years and admire all you've done. But I want to go back to the origin story, of your career and talk to us how you got your foot in the door of entertainment.
I mean, honestly, it was a lot of just sending, those things that I receive all the time, which are, whenever you can connect through some connection, whether it's you've gone to the same college or you're a friend of a friend, I tried to figure out my entire circle. And in 1989, before there was email, when I graduated college, I sent a lot of letters in the mail. I know that sounds crazy with stamps and everything. Letters in the mail to friends of friends and people from college and from otherwise. And, like one door opened to another door. And I got a job as an assistant at a small boutique agency called Bauer Benedek. That agency merged a couple of years later with another boutique agency to become UTA. So actually my first job was at an agency on a desk. And then I pivoted out of there after a year because I wanted to get closer to production and the process of movie making. So I took a circuitous route for 7 years out in production and development. And then I came back to UTA in 97.
And what brought you back to UTA in 97? And who was the first client, do you remember, that you ever signed?
Oh, 1,000%. I still represent him. We talk about it all the time. He came into the building maybe like a week ago to talk to a group of people. And I've represented him in June. It'll be 29 years. So what brought me back, honestly, was I felt like I had learned a lot. It was like I went out there and I got like film school knowledge, without having to go to film school. I worked at Oliver Stone's company and I worked at Burlstein Gray and I worked at Fox. So a lot of agents really grow up through the mailroom system and become agents. Our CEO is a prime example of that, like started in the mailroom and is the CEO. And he's worked here his whole career. But there are a few of us who have been out in the field, making movies, making television, who come into the agency. And I really, I value that experience, even though it set me back a few years. I definitely value the experience. And it taught me about story and storytelling through a different lens. But I came in because I really loved advocating. Like what I love about my job is that I advocate for talent and I protect talent. And I know how to pitch stories and I know how to advocate for them. And that's the part of the job that I love the most. I love the discovery piece of it. I love finding new talent and advocating for them and helping them get their first gig. And I love all the rest that comes after that too. But that is a very exciting part of the story for both the client and for me.
Yeah. And you talked about betting on talent, finding a story and pitching it. One of my favorite stories ever that you've shared with me, and if you're open to sharing it too, about how you bet on two teenagers, I believe, named Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg. Can you talk about that origin story?
I was introduced to Seth when he was coming on to Undeclared, both as a writer and as an actor. And I was introduced to him by clients of mine who were also working on Undeclared. and I went to meet him. And, it was an eye-opening experience because I was really representing writers and directors at the time, and I wasn't necessarily representing actors. But it occurred to me that there was going to be, with success, so much leverage in, this word that wasn't really like out there as much as it is today, the multi-hyphenate. And when I was talking to him and we were talking about what his goals and his hopes and his dreams were, we talked a lot about, being an actor and hopefully like his star rising as an actor and using that as leverage to write and direct, even back then on Undeclared, using that to write and direct and build a company like at that time, Imagine, which at that time was like Ron Howard and Brian Grazer were making A Beautiful Mind and all these incredible movies. They had started in comedy too, the theatrical comedy films. And that's where Seth wanted to start. He was sitting on Superbad. He shared it with me. And they had written it when they were teens in Vancouver. And we took a couple of runs out there with Superbad, and we had a few offers. None that we were so terribly excited about, but we had a few offers. We held on to it and we held it back because even though they weren't making that much money at the time, I said, I think that if we hold back and we allow your career to flourish, and Evan graduates college, he was still in college, and comes out here and you guys really like launch a career, maybe we'll have more leverage down the road to make this thing at a bigger budget, get you guys better fees. So as nervous as all of us were to not take the deal that was in front of us, holding it back was actually like just a valuable lesson for, I think, all of us at that time.
And I think those careers have done fairly well to this point. Amazing story. I love hearing it. How old were they when you first met them?
I think they must have been, well, it was like 25 years ago,
Yeah.
and they're in their early 40s. So whatever that was, I don't even remember. They were I mean, they were still probably like in their late teens, maybe 20, but I think early teens. I mean, late teens.
Yeah, I mean, it's incredible. Superbad, one of my favorite movies of all time. In that story, you had talked about not taking that first offer. When I first got to interview you, probably a year ago, it wasn't too long after that award that you got from AVA's inaugural awards. You talked about the power of no. One thing that I've always my philosophy has always been say yes, but you really changed my mind and my outlook on the power of saying no. Can you talk to us about that and what that means to you?
Well, there are a variety of ways that you say no in a job like mine. I mean, most of the time you say no to a deal, because that's your leverage to generate a better deal and be more protective of the client. But oftentimes, there's an appealing project for an actor. It's got great auspices. And maybe something doesn't completely feel right about it. Maybe there's something in the script that isn't exactly developed enough. And so I have had instances where like you just go, oh my God, this filmmaker is like the end all be all of filmmakers that I've always wanted to work with. And yet the role isn't going to move the needle for you. And it's scary to say no to that opportunity because that filmmaker may have been on your wish list, but you want to hold out for a different project with that filmmaker and hope that that filmmaker comes back to you. So how do you say no, but protect the relationship? I mean, that's one version of no. There's also, like I said, the no in the deal.
Yeah.
There's, there are different sometimes, I'm presented with a potential client, and I can see that potential client, maybe like has a very lucrative career, but the sensibility just doesn't align with me. And I don't think that I'm the perfect agent for that client, even though they're going to generate probably a lot of money, you know what I mean? But like, it's not fair to them and it's not fair to me because I'm not the best advocate for that person. And sometimes I, try and drive that potential client to another team internally. So there's all kinds of no's that, I've experienced over the course of 29 years here. That for one reason or another, it's like probably like been the right reason to say no.
Yeah, and I think a lot of no's open doors for bigger yeses. And you've said yes a lot in your career. And we read out some of the clients that you've signed. What makes you want to bet on new clients? But also in that, what makes you want to bet on people that you hire at UTA?
Well, for both of those, for both, you know, people that are going to work here and talent, you know, I'll separate it out for a minute. What I like to see in people that we're hiring is a point of view, a really strong point of view about themselves, how they advocate for themselves, but also in their sensibility. Why do they like a movie? Why do they like a TV series? Why do they like a comedian? Why do they like, and when they're able to communicate that in a dynamic way, it leads me to believe that they're going to know how to advocate for themselves. And sometimes I challenge them to tell me, you know, why do they want to work here? What do they think their strengths are? What do they think their weaknesses are? You know, but point of view is always a driver for me, and point of view is a driver for me with clients. And even though my client list on IMDb or Studio System looks incredibly chaotic and doesn't seem like it has a through line, each of the clients, when I distill who they are in their lane, is provocative in their point of view and has an auteurship in the way that they express themselves creatively. And that is the thing that really excites me. You know, I know that when they're performing, that I see something in the performance that dazzles me. And I love being dazzled. I love being dazzled by storytelling and storytellers, whether it's in music, whether it's in novels, whether it's in endorsement campaigns. You know, I feel like, you know, influencers and actors and people who do endorsements. And I think it's what led me maybe to even win the award, is like, you're expressing yourself. Like, I get dressed in the morning and I'm, you know, I'm inhabiting a character and I'm expressing my creativity that way. And I feel like everybody that I represent, no matter what they do and no matter where they're telling their story and no matter on what platform, they're expressing a character and a point of view. And that's the thing that draws me to them.
Yeah, and beautifully said, obviously, because you are the best and eloquent at talking about the storytelling of it all within our industry. And point of view for me is the biggest recommendation I give to all college students. It's a way to stand out while fitting in. But there's a lot of assistants out there who are listening right now. Shout out to the UTA team. There's a couple of people that had dropped comments in the live stream as well. And before, what are attributes of good assistants that get them promoted?
I am a really big believer in taking risks and failing. And I think you and I have talked about this before. I believe that if you're not failing and you're not making mistakes, you are not winning and you are not growing and you are not developing as a human being. And I just feel like, you know, as young people, failing, making mistakes is terrifying, and you have to do it in order to move forward in life and on your path. So one of the things that I really, I really expect of our assistants and our trainees is that they, you know, along the way, fall down, you know, and pick themselves back up. And I'm constantly saying to my assistant, like, just whatever, you know, whichever assistant is on my desk, try and stay ahead of me. Don't, you know, not to the detriment of a client, but stay ahead of me and let me let you know when you're making a mistake. Let me let you know when you're falling down. I'm never going to scream at you. I'm never going to retaliate in any way. It's never going to be punitive, and I'm never going to punish you for it. But if you're not staying ahead of me and making a mistake, it's harder for me to train you. You know, if you're just playing in the safety zone, and I demand it of myself.
Yeah.
You know, I have to constantly push myself out of the comfort zone and out of the safety zone to make a call I don't want to make that might feel uncomfortable, to pitch a client for something that probably isn't right going to land. But if I don't do it, who's going to do it for them? Right. And so, and oftentimes I've actually been able to turn a no into a maybe and a maybe into a yes. And I mean, I can think of numerous times where they're like, no, that person's not right for it. And I go out on a limb and let me tell you, why I think this person is. And I put together part of a reel or a body of work that shows, a different side of that person. And so, it's a little bit going or taking a script out to the market in a very specific way that sometimes fails, and I have to reel it back in and repurpose it. And there have been times where we've gotten a no. Neighbors was a prime example of Universal saying, we don't want to make this movie right now in the state that it is. And we took it back and we repurposed it and we cut the budget down and we changed certain things and repurposed the script and then took it back out to Universal and got the yes. And that's another valuable lesson of like really getting critical feedback about why something isn't working and repurposing it. So I'm constantly trying to tell, younger agents and assistants and trainees, like, think about yourself that way. Like, think about making a mistake, taking the wrong desk, repurposing yourself to the right desk. Maybe you get on a desk in lit and you decide you don't want to be a lit agent, but you still love the advocacy part of the job. And maybe you like try a different desk in a different department.
Yeah. And you'd mentioned mistakes there. Is there one that sticks out to you about your own career that taught you a learning lesson?
I mean, there have been so many mistakes along the way, again, like going back to thinking that I'd be the right advocate for a client and realizing that they'd be better served by other teams in the building, almost getting fired internally or getting fired. Like, we as agents, it's a revolving door and you read about it all the time and we get fired by clients. And it's an opportunity to take inventory again about who you are as an agent and how you're advocating for people and why did you get fired and what about that dynamic, where did you fall down? What responsibility do you have in that? And, of course, I look at myself it hurts and it stings and it's embarrassing and it's humiliating, but you have to take stock and it happens to everybody. Not one single agent hasn't been fired by clients, right? And it's an opportunity to take stock and look at where you're responsible for falling short as an advocate and as an agent for that person or that team or whatever it is.
Yeah. You inspire me, and I know you inspire a whole crop of young talent out there. We actually
You inspire me. You inspire me. Come on.
We have actually a question from one of those young crop of talent. We're going to do a little, James, can we do a widescreen here? So we actually have a mail card coming into frame right now that is reminiscent of many of the mail cards in a lot of these agencies, including UTA itself. You may know what this is.
God. Oh yeah, the interoffice mail.
Oh God, we used to have to push these around and at WME. So we actually have a question from the crowd. Here it's from Caitlin. Caitlin,
Hi, Caitlin.
The question is, where's the next crop of superstar movie talent going to come from? Question from Caitlin.
I love that question. When I was starting out as an agent, you went to comedy, and I think I talked about this on a podcast with Jason Heyman. We used to just go to comedy club. We went anywhere, we went to comedy clubs and film festivals, and we went anywhere we had to find talent. But now what's incredible is that the internet does exist and YouTube does exist and Instagram and social media platforms exist and people are discovering talent. You have access to the inner sanctums of agencies in ways that you never had, and I think about all these content creators who are getting signed by agencies and their careers are exploding in so many different facets of it. And you see like someone like Jake Shane get his show up at Netflix, and you watch a guy like Matt Rife get movies made who was like, creating content, comedy content on his platforms. Like, it's really exciting to me, actually, that young people can discover talent and surface them and convert as agents a lot faster than I ever was able to do. It took me a really long time, and it took our clients a really long time. They were not overnight successes. So the overnight success story, I think, I mean, I really see it in music too, just like putting something up on Spotify and it going viral or whatever it does and exploding. And so I don't know. I just think it's fascinating to watch and really exciting to watch.
There's so much to be optimistic about in this industry. There's a lot of doom and gloom headlines that we really push against, that this industry's dying. And we're excited about it. There's so much talent out there that is getting discovered. It's a fractured and fragmented world, but that presents more opportunity to break in. And talking about breaking in, last question here. If you could sit yourself down on your very first day in the industry and give one piece of advice, what would it be?
I'm a big, and you and I have talked about this before too. Like some of the mistakes that I made for myself was comparing myself to others. I think you've got to, and I've said this to you, and I might have said it in the last interview. You've got to run your own race. And it's so hard to do as a young person because you look around and you want to compare yourself to other people's paths. And you just have to put your head down and do the work and run your own race and bet on yourself. And don't bet on yourself in comparison to others. Chart your path. Like one of the things that impressed me about Seth and Evan when they were young was that they could really see, like they could really convey and articulate like what they wanted for themselves 5 years down the road and 10 years down the road. And I'm really I'm a big believer in manifesting what you want for yourself 6 months down the road and a year down the road and 5 years and 10 years. And inside of those markers, those thresholds is really like opportunity and optimism.
Yeah.
Because if you're just like putting your head down and looking at what today is, you're being very reactive versus proactive. And I think if you can chart these like paths for yourself, and that's what impresses me about you, is that you had this thing going and it was really, really good, but you were really clear about what you wanted for yourself and what you wanted for AVA. And you dreamed really big. And I think you have to dream big for yourself. And I have to remind myself to dream big for myself. Like, where do I want to be at 58 years old, 5 years down the road, 10 years down the road? What do I want for myself? And I think that's how I've been able to pivot into all these different areas, because I just didn't want to stay static and stay still in like, when I started at the agency, there was like motion picture lit, and that's what you did. And I was antsy and I was curious and I didn't want to stay in one lane. And I saw myself in a different way. And I saw myself as a multi-hyphenate agent, which I don't even think existed, but I refused to believe that it couldn't. And I think you have to believe in that for yourself. And like Seth was like a baby writer and a baby actor, but he believed that he could direct and that he could produce and that he could direct and produce big IP from comic books when he was making small like he just, I think had big dreams for himself, and they had big dreams for themselves. And I think that they put it out there, without any fear and without any reluctance.
And I was going to say, one thing you challenged me on and left a great piece of advice last time was know what you want and ask for it. If you want to raise, ask for it. If you want to put something out into the world, go and ask for it. If you need help, ask for it. And for me, I struggle with that so much early in my career of trying to internalize everything, having a big dream, but not voicing it, having a problem in my life, but not asking for help. And you've challenged me on that. And I'm always appreciative of these conversations and the words of wisdom that you pass on to me and now on to everyone that's watching.
I'm so glad. Yeah, I always say like nobody rolls out a red carpet, not for actors, not for writers, not for directors, not for producers, not for agents, nobody. And the red carpet was never rolled out for me. It's like I went after being a partner. I went after being a board member. I went after being in talent when I was just in lit, and all these things that you have to actually really push for yourself and advocate. That's why I always say to these young trainees, like before you can represent anybody, you have to learn how to represent yourself.
Amazing. Blair, you're the best.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you, everybody. I'm wishing everybody the best of luck. Go for it. I'm excited for all of you.
We'll see you soon, hopefully in
All
person.
right.
Thanks again for
All
hopping
right.
on.
Take care. Bye.
We'll see you. Blair's the best. I say that about everyone, but she truly is one of my favorite people in the world. And it's amazing to see her career continue to be successful and the people that she's working with. But before we do end today, James, can we bring up a little graphic? We have a big announcement to make. The assistants of the month for April, want to run through them quickly. Congrats to all these. These are voted on, as it says up there, by their peers and maybe even their boss. Derek from CAA, Eli from CTB, Kevin from Black Bear, Madeline from WME, Chelsea from CTB, Carly from Gersh, Michelle from TFC Management, Sabrina from Innovative Artists, Sarah from Paramount, and Thalia from UTA. Congrats to you all. April's Assistants of the Month will be running another crowdsourced May Assistant of the Month at the end of this month. I want to thank you all for joining us for episode 5 of AVA Live. We'll be back next Wednesday, same time, same place, 12:30 p.m. PT. We'll see you then. And that is a wrap.